Hello and welcome back. This is Rachel from the Shades of Orange. Today I want to review Beneath by Kristi DeMeester, which I requested from Word Horde after reading one of her short stories, Yes, No, Goodbye, which was featured in the horror anthology Tales from a Talking Board. So this is a horror novel that follows a journalist, Cora, who is assigned to go to a small town and investigate a church that does snake handling. If you're not familiar with the practice, this is something that has happened in US churches where they follow the Bible very literally and will pass around snakes in order to see whether or not people have sin. Supposedly, if you do have sin, then the snake will bite you. Otherwise, you can safely pass it along without getting hurt. The story also follows a young girl who attends this church and is about to be initiated into the church by going through and having her first snake handling experience, which, let's say, goes a little bit wrong. As well, the story follows the pastor Wayne, who has some very lustful, inappropriate thoughts for this underage girl, and the story takes off from there. Given that premise, you probably think that the story is going to deal more heavily with the elements of snake handling. However, the church actually plays a very small role in the story. It's really just a setup and a starting place, and then the story takes off from there. Overall, I would say this is a very supernatural story. It's going to have a lot of nods to Lovecraftian horror, where there is that cosmic, ancient powers that exist within the world, and the story and the horror elements are going to play very predominantly off of that. I would say that this book is going to appeal most to readers of thrillers, perhaps people who are looking to get into the horror genre. This would be a great place to start. It's a relatively short book. Honestly, it's under 350 pages, so it was just about the right length, and it's very much a fast-paced horror novel, which I personally like, and the writing itself was, of course, fantastic. She just has some very twisted ways of describing things that were just very imaginative. I think if you just like kind of a darker, descriptive writing, then you will very much like her style, and I just thought it was phenomenal. Now, within the story, there were a few places where the narrative was a bit jarring, or places where I would have liked to have seen more of the action. We were simply told that an event happened. However, overall, the book was just a fast-paced, intense story and just plain a lot of fun. Now, whenever you talk horror, you have to talk about scariness, so I'll let you know that the author uses a few different avenues to bring in those horror elements. First, the most predominant way that the horror is introduced to this book is through the supernatural. This book will most appeal to readers who enjoy suspending their disbelief and go along with ancient creatures and really buy into the world that DeMeester creates. As well, this book does play with elements of possession, which I really enjoy, those psychological elements, the questioning of whether or not a person is possessed, whether they are in control of their actions. As well, this book, of course, deals with snakes, and in my personal opinion, these were easily the creepiest scenes in this book. Whether or not you have a phobia of snakes, these scenes will be creepy. I just found my skin crawling reading these descriptions, and they were just vivid and creepy, and just the slithering, the way she describes them worked so well. So if you are at all scared of snakes, this book would be super scary, and it's just a lot of fun. The snakes are a bit, again, supernatural in nature, but regardless, they're snakes, they're creepy, they're weird, and you will just love those scenes in the book. Now, I do need to let you know that this book does deal heavily with sexual abuse, so let me be clear. If you are triggered by sexual abuse, this book will not be for you. It deals with the subject matter head on. As well, if you're simply a sensitive reader, if that's not a subject matter that you want to read about, if you find that uncomfortable, you might want to steer clear of this book as well. However, if you like a story that can push the limit, that can tell a very disturbing story. I am someone who actually likes books that make my stomach churn, that make me uncomfortable and question what the heck I'm reading. And this was one of those books. It deals with some very uncomfortable moments, and it really goes into the sexuality of the story head on, and is just very unapologetic how it does that. So it deals a lot with the themes of not only sexual abuse, but just female sexuality in general. and it does have some very heavy thematic symbolism in here. The snakes are at times used as phallic objects as well. Of course, there's a tie-in of Eve, original sin, and the temptation of the snake. And I think the themes of sexuality worked so well because this book was written from a female perspective. I'll be honest, I think a lot of the book could have been very problematic had it been written by someone else, particularly a male author. But DeMeester is very clever of how she writes her book and is able to avoid those traps and hurdles and write a book that deals with some very complicated, sensitive issues in a very appropriate way. DeMeester is able to write some very dark, vile characters, but write them in a way that they're not simply black and white. While she can write ugly, nasty people with nasty thoughts, she still makes them very well-rounded, very interesting, and will really play with the reader's emotions so that you're going to find yourself almost sympathizing with people that you should not sympathize with. And I found that that's what I love so much about DeMeester, is her ability to write unflinching characters. Needless to say, if you can't tell, I would recommend this book if you are the right audience for it. Again, this is not a book for sensitive readers, but if you enjoy horror, if you enjoy nasty books about nasty people, this one might be right up your alley. I just really loved it. I think DeMeester has some serious favorite author potential. While this book wasn't quite perfect for me, I still loved it. I loved everything she was doing. Those are all my thoughts on Beneath by Kristi DeMeester. I do hope you pick it up and would love to know down below if you're planning on doing so. As well, if you've already read it, I'd love to hear your thoughts, as long as you keep them spoiler free. And I'd also love for you to recommend to me some of your favorite female horror authors, because I just really think that I enjoy reading from that female perspective. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.